His defeat in the presidential election of 1836 had been a bitter pill for Stephen F. Austin to swallow. Just a year before, all of Texas had rejoiced upon his return from Mexican detention. Citizens had hosted barbecues in his honor, sought his advice, and praised his dedication. But now, even some of the old contract colonists doubted his integrity and withheld their votes. As far as the flood of American newcomers, the name Austin meant nothing to them. Apparently, the only brands they knew were Houston and San Jacinto. Even so, a gentleman, as always, Austin exhibited no rancor toward the victor. Only once did his resentment reveal itself, and then with but one word. He bemoaned the blindness of old Texians who had forsaken him. He shared a doleful reflection with his favorite cousin, Mary Austin Holly.
A successful military chieftain is hailed with admiration and applause, but the bloodless pioneer of the wilderness, like the corn and cotton he causes to spring where it never grew before, attracts no notice. No slaughtered thousands or smoking cities attest his devotion to the cause of human happiness, and he is regarded by the mass of the world as a humble instrument to pave the way for others.
Nonetheless, the old optimism never faded. The week of Houston's inauguration, he wrote his brother-in-law,
I think that matters will go on well and smoothly in both the executive and legislative departments. There evidently is a disposition to harmonize in all persons.
On October 28, 1836, President Houston informed Austin that the Senate had approved his nomination as Secretary of State. This was a generous gesture on Houston's part, who wished to honor his former rival and ensure political harmony. Yet, there were also more pragmatic considerations. The new president needed a steady hand at the State Department, and whose hand was steadier than Austin's? President Houston may have meant well, but he did Austin no favors. The former impresario was in wretched health. He had always possessed a delicate constitution. He had almost died on his last trip to Mexico City, and his stint in prison had all but broken his health. Returning to Texas, he had accepted the command of the Army of the People, but he had been so weak during the 1835 campaign that he required Simon, his body servant, to help him mount his horse. Traveling to the United States, Austin had worked unstintingly as an agent promoting the cause of Texas. Then he returned to Texas to campaign for the executive office. Now, in October 1836, Austin was near the end of his tether, and he knew it. He wrote the president,
Your Excellency is fully aware of the debilitated state of my constitution and health, and also of the labors which devolve upon me in the land department. I, however, accept of the appointment and am ready to enter upon the duties of the office, with the understanding that I be allowed the privilege of retiring should my health and situation require it.
Most other men would have simply said no, but Austin was unlike other men. Nowadays, one might describe him as a workaholic. Austin would have found it difficult to grasp that term. Time was short, and there was still much to do. How could one ever work too much? A profound sense of obligation was his northern star. He would have agreed with the English novelist Jane Austen when she observed,
It isn't what we say or think that defines us. but what we do.
Austin would have described himself as, and this is a word contemporary people seldom hear, dutiful. He should have taken the time to recover his health, but true to his nature, Austin pitched into his new responsibilities heart and soul. He had much to do. At last, he concluded preparations for Santana's release. Both the President and the Secretary of State desired that the captive dictator quietly depart Texas and travel to the U.S. Capitol on the Potomac River. Once there, he would huddle with President Andrew Jackson before returning to Mexico. Surely his mere presence in that benighted country would prove troublesome enough to relieve pressure from the breakaway republic.
Don't call me Shirley.
Other particulars on Austin's to-do list included a prisoner exchange from the recent revolution and the promulgation of a decree against the African slave trade. The Texas capital had migrated from the town of Washington to Harrisburg, to Galveston, to Velasco, and finally Columbia. Austin followed the government. He lived in a rented shed room without stove or hearth. For all of his labors and dedication, Austin had little estate. As he explained,
I have no house, not a roof in all Texas that I can call my own. The only one I had was burnt at San Felipe during the late invasion of the enemy. I make my home where the business of the country calls me. I have no farm, no cotton plantation, no income, no money, no comforts. I have spent the prime of my life and worn out my constitution in trying to colonize this country.
he had worked as hard as anyone ever had, but despite all that, he feared he would meet the same fate as his father, dying penniless. Right before Christmas in 1836, a blue norther swept across Texas. Shivering in his unheated shack, Austin caught a cold. It would have been a minor malady for anyone with a vigorous immune system, but by now, no one could describe any part of him as vigorous, except, perhaps, his intellect. The cold settled into his lungs and became pneumonia. No bed was available, so doctors placed him atop a pallet on the hard wooden floor. On December 27th, Austin seemed a bit more coherent. During the day, he drifted in and out of perception. At one point, he woke, and in a voice so faint that visitors could barely hear it, he uttered,
The independence of Texas is recognized. Don't you see it in the papers? Dr. Archer told me so.
With that, he lapsed back into slumber and faded away. Ironically, it fell to President Houston, Austin's old nemesis, to notify the nation. His public notice read, in part,
The father of Texas is no more. The first pioneer of the wilderness has departed.
and so he had. The Patriarch had not lived to see the end of that pivotal year in Texas history, one that included the Alamo, Goliad, San Jacinto, the capture of Santana, and the election of Sam Houston. Nor did he live to see most of his ambitions and dreams fulfilled, the same ambitions and dreams which he made possible for so many others. Texans, his spiritual children, continued to live Austin's dreams for him.